Hey everyone, Evan here from Mobile Groove Tech, and today we'll be comparing Cupertino's latest, the Apple iPad 3rd generation, to Google's new 7-inch slate, the Nexus 7, which is a lot more budget-friendly at only $200. Let's take a look and see who comes out on top. So the most obvious difference between these two tablets is, well, the size. The Nexus 7, as its name would suggest, is a 7-inch tablet, that's measured diagonally of course, meanwhile the Apple iPad measures in at 9.7 inches. If we take a look, we can plop the Nexus 7 right on top of the Apple iPad, and as you can see, the tablet, bezel included, fits snugly right inside the Apple iPad's display. From a dimension standpoint, the Apple iPad is 9.5 inches in height, 7.3 inches in width, and 0.37 inches thin, or 9.4 millimeters, which is extremely thin. It comes in at a relatively heavy, at least compared to the Nexus 7, 23 ounces or 652 grams. The Nexus 7, on the other hand, comes in at 7.8 inches in height, 4.7 inches in width, and well, not anorexic compared to the iPad, but still very thin, 0.4 inches, or 10.45 millimeters in thinness. This is also a lot lighter at about 12 ounces or 340 grams, so that's definitely something to take in mind if you're going to be taking these tablets out with you. Alright, so what about display quality? We obviously know that the Apple iPad is a much larger 9.7-inch display, however, the resolution is also quite high in comparison. It comes in at 2048 pixels in height by 1536 pixels in width at 264 pixels per inch, so that makes text very sharp, especially when you're in the browser. The Nexus 7, on the other hand, comes in at 1280 in height, 800 in width, and that's 216 pixels per inch, so that's also very high resolution in comparison to some other tablets. However, it doesn't quite match Apple's offering. Regarding brightness, the Apple iPad comes in at a much brighter display. You can see I have the maximum brightness here, and the Nexus 7's display is also very bright. However, in comparison to the iPad's, it still lacks a little bit. Colors on the iPad also seem a lot more vivid compared to the Nexus 7, which seems a little washed out in comparison. However, the display is certainly still no slouch over here on the left. Now, the Nexus 7 is definitely a speed demon. With a quad-core NVIDIA Tegra 3 processor, there's 1.2 GHz on each of those cores, plus a 5th companion core to run discrete background tasks. It is very, very fast and fluid throughout the entire operating system. Here we are in the browser, we've loaded up Engadget.com, and it is just very smooth, as you can see, much smoother than all the other Android tablets on the market. Pinch to zoom is very fluid, it just performs very well. However, that being said, the Apple iPad isn't a slouch either. It comes with a dual-core Apple A5X processor that's made by Samsung, with 1 GHz on each core. It also comes with a quad-core GPU, and as you can see, navigating throughout the browser is also extremely smooth here. Again, pinch to zoom is very nice and fluid, and it's up there right with the Nexus 7. Now obviously the Nexus 7 will require some more processing power because Android is a much more processor intensive operating system. However, Apple's done a nice job optimizing their software for their hardware, and it just runs very nicely overall. So let's talk a bit about software. The Apple iPad has iOS 5. Now that's the latest iteration, aside from iOS 6, which is still in beta, of Apple's iOS operating system, which runs on all of their mobile devices. As you can see, it's fairly straightforward and pretty idiot-proof. You have your array of icons around here on your homepage. You can swipe through and create multiple pages, and if you'd like, you can create folders as well to keep those in. So over here we have probably the polar opposite of iOS, which is Android. This is 4.1, the latest iteration, and as you can see, it's much more customizable. I have my Google Plus feed, a clock, lots of widgets, a Twitter widget. I have all of my browser bookmarks, and of course, just like iOS, I have an array of icons along here. I can also add folders, just like this one that's pre-made by Google. I have my games folder here, and it all works very well. Also, because this is made by Google, I have Google Search integration right here. And just like on iOS, going through the operating system is just very smooth, very fluid. And as you can see, even swiping through my app drawer, which has all of my apps in alphabetical order, just goes very well. This is somewhere where we saw quite a bit of lag on previous versions of Android, and this is all fixed on Android 4.1, thanks to what Google's calling Project Butter, which is Google's word for essentially meaning that all transitions in Android have to be running at 60 frames per second, which is very fast and very speedy. So something else that's worth noting in comparison between these two is their application stores. The Apple iPad has the App Store here, which was first to the market and offers over 100,000 Apple iPad specific apps. As you can see, we have Google Earth loaded up here. We can take a look at some of the screenshots of the apps. We can also download applications like Google Play Books or Apple's own iBooks, which has access to a wide library of ebooks for purchase. Now, the Nexus 7 comes preloaded with the Google Play Store, which is their variant of the App Store, and that comes with very few, actually, tablet-specific apps, at least in comparison to the iPad. There are still quite a bit of good ones. And from there, you can again purchase apps, movies, books, and more. Google's preloaded this with a couple of books. Here we have the Nexus 7 guide, and we can just flip through the pages here. At the bottom, we can choose our page just by flipping around. And here is Google's Play Store. We can take a look. I have Amazing Alex loaded up here, Rovio's latest game. But of course, we can take a look, we can search apps, we can take a look at games, and it all works very well. So if apps are your thing, you may want to take a look at the Apple iPad. And if you want to do more things like reading books, watching movies, perhaps the Google Nexus 7 will be a better choice. So you're probably asking now, who's the winner? Well, it's a close call and very tough to judge. It's like comparing apples to oranges. In this case, apples to Android, though. And they're very different tablets and designed for a different market. The Nexus 7 is obviously for the budget-conscious folk who still want a very usable and functional tablet. The Apple iPad is more of a premium model that will work for people who have no budget in mind and want the best of the best. However, if you prefer the 7-inch model, the 7-inch form factor as a whole, the Nexus 7 will be a much better choice, but if you prefer the 10-inch form factor, the Apple iPad will be a better choice. However, in terms of value and sheer pricing, I have to say that the Nexus 7 is a better tablet simply because of its cheaper pricing. Now, if the Apple iPad were priced at $200, that would be a whole different story, and again, it would still come down to personal preference of size, but it would be very different in the sense that the Apple iPad would be cheaper, and you could get a very premium tablet for a much lower price. Now, if the rumored Apple iPad